Holes.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And we thank you for being here, Barnaby.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. So imagine you own a valuable asset, maybe a mobile home park you've run for years, and you're thinking about selling. You hit this real tension point, grab all the cash now and face a potentially huge tax hit. Or is there another way, a way to maybe turn that sale into income?
That's exactly the tension we're digging into today. We're exploring something called seller carry financing. You might also hear it called owner financing.
Yeah.
And it's not some, exotic structure. It's actually a pretty strategic move where you, the seller, essentially step into the role of the bank.
Okay, becoming the bank.
Yeah, turning your equity, all that value you built up, into a secured income-producing asset, a performing note.
Right. So our mission today, let's really unpack that, not just define it, but show you, the listener, how this actually works step by step, and maybe more importantly, why it can often be a really smart play, secure, profitable, turning what could be a big tax headache into, well, passive wealth.
Exactly. The big idea is reframing the sale itself. You're not just cashing out, you're converting. You convert that equity into a promissory note, which is backed by the very property you're selling. That's your security.
And that gives you control, right, over the deal speed, maybe even the tax impact.
Precisely. You avoid some of the typical closing games, like appraisal issues, and you get to manage the tax side more strategically.
Okay, so let's get practical. Say I own a park, it's worth $800,000, and I'm ready to retire. How do I actually make that shift from owner to private lender?
Okay, good question. It really starts with ensuring security. Step one is the buyer's down payment. This is crucial. It's the seller's immediate safety net, and it ensures the buyer has real skin in the game.
Skin in the game, right. How much are we talking usually?
Typically, you're looking at maybe 10% to 30% of the price. So in your $800,000 example, maybe the buyer puts down, say, $150,000 in cash at closing.
Okay, $150K up front. That feels substantial. It covers immediate risk, gives the seller some liquidity right away.
Exactly.
So what about the rest, the remaining $650,000?
That's where the seller financing kicks in. Step two, financing the balance. The seller carries that $650,000. They create a formal promissory note, just like a bank loan document, and it's secured by a lien on the property. It's collateralized.
And they agree on the terms, just like a bank would.
Yep.
Interest rate, payments.
Yes, all the key terms. The interest rate, we often see these between, say, 5% and 8%, the monthly payment amount, and the term length.
Let's pause on that interest rate, 5% to 8%. That often seems a bit higher than maybe a prime commercial loan rate. Why is that?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. It reflects the convenience for the buyer. They're avoiding potentially months of bank hoops, appraisal worries, all that. And it compensates the seller for, providing that capital and taking on the role of the lender. They deserve a return for that flexibility.
Makes sense. So using our example, that $650,000 note, let's say at 6% interest, what does that generate?
Okay, simple math. $650,000 times 6% is $39,000 a year in interest, divided by 12. That's $3,250 hitting the seller's bank account every single month.
Wow, okay. $3,250 a month. That directly addresses that income replacement question for someone retiring, doesn't it?
It absolutely does, and that leads right into step three, receiving that monthly income. It becomes this steady, reliable stream. Some people call it mailbox money. And it's secure because it's tied to an asset the seller knows inside and out. They trust its value.
Well, if they're not investing in some abstract thing, they're invested in the property they just sold.
Exactly.
Okay, so you get the down payment, you finance the rest, you collect monthly payments. What's the final piece? How does the seller get the rest of their principal back?
That's step four, the balloon payment. These seller carry notes usually aren't for 30 years like a home mortgage. They're typically shorter term, maybe 3 years, 5 years, sometimes 7. At the end of that agreed upon term, the balloon payment is due.
Meaning the buyer has to pay off the entire remaining principal balance, the full $650,000 in our example?
Correct. The buyer usually achieves this by either refinancing the property with a traditional bank loan now that they've perhaps improved it or stabilized it, or by selling the property outright.
And the seller gets their $650,000 principal back, plus they've collected all that interest income over the years.
Precisely. They get the principal returned, plus all the interest earned during the note's term.
Okay, the mechanics seem clear, but let's push back a bit. Why would I, as a seller, willingly pass up $800,000 cash in hand today? Isn't a lump sum always safer, faster,
It definitely feels safer sometimes, that big number in your account, but financially, it's often not the smartest move, believe it or not. The primary advantage of seller carry really boils down to yield and taxes. Let's talk yield first.
Oh,
That predictable monthly income, the $3,250 a month we calculated, over a 5-year term, that adds up. That's almost $195,000 just in interest income.
$195,000 extra on top of the principal.
Yes, pure passive income secured by the asset. Now, compare that. If you took the $800K cash up front, what would you do with it?
Well, I guess I'd have to find somewhere to invest it, right? Maybe CDs, treasury bonds, something safe.
Exactly. And what are the yields on those right now? Maybe 3% on a CD if you're lucky, 4% on treasuries. You're chasing low single-digit returns.
Right. While the seller carry note is generating 6%, maybe even 7% or 8%.
Precisely. You're earning a bank-level return, but with security tied to a real asset you understand intimately. You've effectively turned your equity into a high-yield bond secured by your old property.
That's a powerful way to frame it. But you mentioned taxes too.
Yeah.
How does seller carry change the tax picture? Because that initial hit on a cash sale can be brutal.
Oh, it's huge. This is often the real game changer, the main reason sellers go this route. It's about deferral and optimization.
Okay, explain that. How does the deferral work?
With a standard cash sale, you sell for $800K. Let's say your profit, your capital gain, is significant. You could easily owe 20%, maybe 25% of that profit in capital gains tax, all in the year of the sale.
So if the profit was, hypothetically, the full $800K, just to make it simple, you might owe $160,000 or even $200,000 immediately to the IRS.
Potentially, yes. A huge chunk of your proceeds vanishes instantly. That's capital you can never invest or earn interest on again.
Ouch. Okay, so how does seller financing fix that?
It uses what's called the installment sale method for tax purposes. Instead of paying tax on the entire profit up front, you only pay tax each year on the portion of the payments you actually receive that year.
So you're taxed on the down payment received in year one, and then taxed on the principal portion of the monthly payments each subsequent year.
Exactly. And the interest income is taxed as ordinary income each year too. But the big gain, the principal repayment, is spread out.
Which means you can potentially manage your income to stay in a lower tax bracket each year instead of having one massive income spike in the year of sale.
You got it. You turn a single large taxable event into something much more manageable, like a tax-optimized annuity. You keep more of your principal working for you for longer.
Okay, that tax advantage is really compelling. But every deep dive needs to look at the risks. What's the downside for the seller? What if the buyer stops paying? Defaults on that $650,000 note.
That's the number one question, and it's critical. The security provisions are key here. Remember, the seller holds a promissory note secured by a first-position lien on the property.
First position lien, meaning they're first in line to get paid if things go wrong, even before other creditors.
Correct. It's recorded publicly, just like a bank's mortgage. If the buyer defaults, consistently misses payments, the seller has the legal right to foreclose on the property.
Foreclose. That sounds messy.
Yeah.
Especially for someone who wanted to retire and stop dealing with property issues.
It can be, legally speaking, foreclosure is the ultimate remedy. But think about it practically. A serious buyer who put down a significant cash amount, $150,000 in our case, and has likely invested time and maybe more money into the property.
They have a lot to lose by defaulting.
A huge amount. Willful default by a professional buyer with substantial equity is statistically quite rare. The lien provides the ultimate security, but the buyer's own investment is a powerful deterrent.
So the seller essentially gets the property back, and they keep the down payment and any payments made so far.
Yes. If it came to foreclosure, the seller reclaims the asset, keeps the down payment, and keeps all the payments received up to that point. It's a strong position. They maintain control.
Okay, that does offer significant peace of mind. Let's shift gears slightly. What about the selling process itself? Does seller financing make the actual transaction easier or faster?
Oh, dramatically so. This is another major plus. Think about a typical commercial real estate sale involving bank financing.
Months, right. Appraisals, environmental reports, loan committees, endless paperwork.
Exactly. It can drag on for months and months, and deals fall apart over appraisal gaps or underwriting issues all the time.
So how does seller carry speed things up?
When you, the seller, are also the lender, you become the approval committee. You're vetting the buyer's financials, their track record, their character.
You set the terms, you make the decision.
Right. You're not waiting on some anonymous bank underwriter hundreds of miles away. If you trust the buyer and the numbers work for you, you can move to closing much faster. sometimes in just a few weeks.
Weeks versus months. That's a big difference, especially if the seller wants to move on.
It absolutely is, and it ties into another benefit, reduced stress. We sometimes call it a soft landing.
Soft landing. How so?
Well, the seller transitions out of the day-to-day grind, no more chasing tenants, dealing with repairs, city inspectors, all that operational stress. But they're not just cut off entirely. They've replaced the stress of managing the asset with the much calmer activity of collecting secured payments from that asset. It's a smoother transition into retirement or their next venture.
Okay, so we've covered the seller's angle pretty thoroughly. Income, yield, taxes, control, speed, less stress. It sounds pretty good for them. But it takes two to tango. Why would a buyer, especially a capable professional buyer, want seller financing? Why wouldn't they just go to a bank?
Great question. Because the benefits flow both ways. This is really about creating a win-win dynamic. Savvy buyers often prefer seller financing for several reasons.
Like what?
First, speed and certainty. Just like the seller benefits from a faster close, so does the buyer. They avoid those bank roadblocks and delays. Second, flexibility. Seller financing terms can sometimes be structured more creatively than rigid bank loans. Maybe slightly different payment schedules or interest-only periods initially.
Allowing them to maybe use their cash for immediate park improvements instead of just satisfying bank reserve requirements.
Exactly. They can deploy capital into improving the asset, fixing roads, upgrading utilities, enhancing curb appeal right from day one rather than having it tied up by the bank. This increases the value of the property, which, remember, is also the seller's collateral.
That actually helps the seller too, then. Makes their collateral stronger.
It absolutely does. And there's another technical point buyers appreciate. It often helps with something called the debt service coverage ratio, or DSCR.
Ah, DSCR. Can you quickly unpack that for our listeners? How does seller financing help there?
Sure. DSCR is basically the property's net operating income divided by the total loan payments for the year. Banks are very strict about this. They might require the property to generate, say, $1.25 in income for every $1 of debt payment.
A 1.25x DSCR.
Right. Sometimes, especially if a property needs work, it might not hit that ratio immediately under traditional bank terms, because seller financing can be more flexible, maybe with interest-only periods or slightly adjusted terms initially.
It makes it easier for the buyer to cover the payments from the property's cash flow right away, even while they're investing in improvements.
Precisely. It eases that immediate cash flow pressure, which banks often impose rigidly.
Okay, so the buyer gets speed, flexibility, easier cash flow management, which probably makes them more willing to pay a fair price, maybe even closer to the seller's asking price.
That's often the case. They're saving time, hassle, and potentially thousands in bank fees and holding costs. That value gets factored in. It creates this sense of mutual trust and alignment.
Alignment. Because the seller still has a vested interest in the buyer's success.
Absolutely. The seller isn't just handing over the keys. They're choosing a successor, someone they trust to maintain the property's value and, frankly, make the payments. It protects the seller's financial interests and often their legacy, too.
It reframes the negotiation, doesn't it? The source material mentioned this. A buyer proposing seller carry isn't trying to lowball. They're courting the seller into a partnership.
That's a great way to put it. They're acknowledging the value the seller built and proposing a structure that respects it while offering benefits to both sides.
So who is this really ideal for? What kind of seller benefits most?
It's particularly perfect for sellers who own their property free and clear or with very low debt. Those looking to retire or shift to more passive income generation, and especially those who are sensitive to that big immediate capital gains tax hit and want a smoother, more private sale process.
Okay, let's bring it all together. Let's synthesize this using our $800,000 example one last time. Compare the outcomes.
Yeah. Scenario one.
Yeah.
Cash sale. Seller gets $800,000, but let's say faces that immediate $160,000 tax bill we estimated. Their net proceeds to reinvest are significantly lower, maybe $640,000, and they need to find somewhere to put that money safely, likely earning low returns.
Okay, scenario two. Seller carry. They get the $150,000 down payment. Then they receive that $3,250 monthly income stream.
Over 5 years, that's $195,000 in interest income. Then the $650,000 balloon payment comes back.
So total cash received over the 5 years is the $150K to owe down, plus the $195K interest, plus the $650K principal. It's $995,000. Wait, is that right? 150 plus 195 plus 650 equals 995K. Did I miss something in the outlet? Let me recheck the original example. The $800 goes the offer price, 150K down, 650K note. The comparison was 160K tax versus 195K interest plus 650K principal returned. Let's restart that synthesis.
Good catch. Okay, let's resynthesize. Cash sale of $800K property assumes significant gain leads to roughly $160K in immediate taxes. Net is lower.
Right. Now, seller carry. $800 K price, $158 down payment, $650K note at 6% for 5 years. That generates $195,000 in interest over the term.
Correct. So the seller receives $150K down payment. They receive $195,000 in interest income over 5 years, and then they receive the $650,000 principal back via the balloon payment.
Okay, so total cash inflow over time is $150K plus $195K plus $650K for $995,000. But the key comparison point was the immediate tax hit versus the ongoing income and deferred gain.
Exactly. Instead of losing 160 kiles off the top to taxes immediately, the seller carry structure generates $195,000 in additional income over the 5 years before getting the principal back. And the tax on the principal gain is paid gradually, not all at once.
So comparing the net result after taxes and considering the time value of money and the extra interest earned.
The seller carry seller almost certainly walks away wealthier. They've earned substantial extra income, they've managed their tax liability much more effectively, and they did it all while maintaining control through a secured investment. Less tax, less stress, better financial position.
So the final thought here for you, our listener. Selling a major asset doesn't have to be this all-or-nothing decision between active management and immediate liquidation.
Right. Seller carry financing is this really powerful tool, often overlooked, honestly. It transforms a simple sale into a more sophisticated financial strategy.
It's like building a bridge, isn't it, between your ownership and the next generations, built on, well, fairness and smart financial planning.
It really is. And it makes you think, where else could this mindset apply? This idea of banking the sale yourself, turning an exit into a performing asset instead of just taking the cash, something to chew on.